technologies. But I'd argue that so much of the community was built, it exists because of the lack of documentation for years and years and years, and those scenarios. And it was the community that was driving a lot of that, and that's still happening. But I think we're just getting a better picture from Microsoft up front when these new pieces are released, these new features and capabilities of where things fit.
Just a minute, guys.
Anyway,
something hiccuped with the stream. I think right, I'm waiting for it to come back, and hopefully someone's here. One of you guys joined the chat? I haven't joined the chat yet.
Yeah, it's
I had red lights flashing on my end, and I think I have the stream. I think I have the stream going back out to Connor or Hugo.
The session ending. Yes, Gareth says, "Jiggle the cable."
Restart the internet. Break time. Live stuff. Oh, Gareth says we see you. Helen says she can see us all.
Oh, there's a delay then. On
so there must be a delay somewhere. They said Christian's muted. I think your audio is still fine, Christian.
I should be.
Yeah, I see it coming through okay. There he is.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to assume... so it was all me. You can blame it on me. You know that redundant internet? I don't know if it kicked over to another internet connection or what, but I had flashing red lights on the whole stream feed. Okay, do you want to keep going with the keynote?
Do we want to go to the next segment or one more feedback item? Next segment?
Yep.
All right, let me kick off that next segment.
And tell me when ready.
But, here it comes. Oh, this was mine. The Microsoft 365 explodes. This was some of that scaling stuff and some of the growth that they've seen throughout.
There really is a very different SharePoint. And because of that work we did over that last decade, SharePoint was able to grow tenfold in the last 4 years since the 2016 event, and still, even at this stage for SharePoint, double in the last 12 months, in part to respond to people's needs with COVID-19. The following year, we introduced Microsoft Teams, which of course integrated with SharePoint. Teams became the fastest growing business product in our history. That was an interesting moment where we had 85 million monthly active users for Office 365, even as Teams was starting to ramp up. And to show you the continued investment you all made in us, just 3 years later, Office 365 has over 250 million monthly active users, and Teams alone has over 75 million daily active users. And probably more impressively, in getting to the elasticity of our service and our architectures, in the last quarter, with the adoption of remote work and education, the daily minutes on Microsoft Teams calls and meetings grew 20-fold to over 4 billion minutes a day. And so again, that wasn't code we wrote in a day or a week or a month. We've been doing that work over the last decade plus, thanks to your feedback and investment in us. So I hope everybody very much feels proud that our ability to respond to this challenge is based on your bet in us, and we don't take that for granted, and we'll continue going. I thought I'd give a little more inside the scenes of what's supported that work to scale this service. And so for that, let me bring up one of the group program managers for the Microsoft 365 infrastructure to talk about scalability, Navjot Burke. Navjot?
Thank you, Jeff. So over the last few years, we have built a scalable and elastic architecture for Microsoft 365 services built on top of Azure's global infrastructure. This enables us to quickly scale up our services for customer demand and also provide you a great experience wherever your users may be. In the last few months, in response to COVID-19, millions of organizations and hundreds of millions of users have started using Microsoft 365. As Jeff mentioned, in the last 12 months, SharePoint usage has doubled. And in last quarter alone, Teams meetings usage has gone up 20x. Of course, we've also had to do engineering work to support this unprecedented growth. For example, we have done work to add Azure capacity faster. We have done work to add users and organizations at a faster rate, and done work to reduce our operational costs. All of this learning will enable us to take Microsoft 365 from 250 million active users today to billions of users tomorrow and offer you a service with a higher rate of reliability and performance.
That's great, Navjot. In addition to scalability, obviously a lot of people are asking about performance, devices, networking, how people should access the cloud from their home, what guidance we give people on network optimization as people are collaborating on files and meetings and so forth. And so maybe you could share next some of the work we're doing around performance, including the guidance for customers with performance in Microsoft 365.
So you're right, Jeff. For the best performance, we are recommending that users use split tunneling instead of using a VPN for all connectivity. We want your users to connect to Microsoft network as fast as possible so they can take advantage of our global network infrastructure and also reduce the load on your VPN, which usually don't have the capacity to support 100% of employees all the time. To help you with last mile of connectivity, we're introducing network connectivity insights in Microsoft 365 Admin Center. On this page, you will find a global map that shows you all the locations where your users are working from. These locations are color-coded based on the network performance. As you can see here, in my case, the users in Melbourne, Australia are not having a great experience. I can double-click on that to drill down and learn more about the issues in this particular location and get recommendations for how I can improve the network performance. For example, here the system has detected that these users are connecting to an Azure front door that is located all the way in North America instead of one closer to Melbourne. We want to power you with insights so you can offer your users the best possible experience when working from home.
All right. I think we made it through all of that. So thank you everyone for bearing with us while we sorted it out. The live stream on my end started throwing all kinds of errors, and then it was getting everything reconnected and refigured out. So if you missed some of that as you jumped back in, that part of Jeff's keynote was talking about just the growth they've seen, how they have gone. I was trying to remember some of the numbers, but they've hit like 4 billion meetings or meeting minutes daily to Teams calls and Teams meetings, and just that growth over the last month. And again, I've been really impressed with how well they've handled it. It would be fascinating to see some of the behind the scenes. But some of the other things they talked about that I wanted to highlight there, because I've seen this not just with everybody working from home, but even before this, was they touched on it really briefly about getting all of your Office 365 users close to the internet, not sending them over VPN, not having a central egress point for all of your users where you have all your home users connecting to your Office VPN and then going from there to Office 365, but making sure you have split tunneling set up on your VPN. And then that new tool that they announced, the network, I'm drawing the blank on it, but where it would help analyze your network connection. I've played with it. There's a link out there to the preview of it where you can start seeing, based on your user's location, what their network performance is. It uses some features in the OneDrive sync client to test bandwidth, to test internet connectivity, and really help you analyze what your user's experience is going to be when it comes to that Office 365 and Microsoft 365 connectivity. So to me, that was kind of a new feature that got snuck in there, some advice about getting your users out to the main internet, not going through VPN as much as possible. And again, just kind of props to Microsoft for how well they've handled the growth. So I don't know if you guys had anything else there.
Well, one tidbit that Jeff was mentioning, which is important, is that he stretched the important that this technology is not like built over day, but that's sometimes like 1 or 2 decades of technology making this happening, like the extreme scaling, that this can only be done because Microsoft has been investing in this platform for such a long time. So I think that's important to understand, certainly for people just jumping in on Microsoft 365, that this platform actually went live in, I think, September 2009. So the platform as an online productivity platform exists for 11 years almost, and Azure even like a year longer. So it's more than a decade where Microsoft has been running this platform. So we should not forget that. Although for some people, it might be pretty new. So,
well, yeah, it was actually prior to that. So I think the Office 365 brand was in 2008 when it got rebranded. So it went, for those that, for a history lesson, it was Microsoft Managed Services. Then it was changed to BPOS, or Business Productivity Online Services, and then rebranded as as Office 365. And now, of course, Microsoft 365, which Office 365 is part of that. But but I think you guys are exactly right. It's an iterative process. They've learned about it, and no matter how much testing, anybody that works in software understands this too. No matter how much testing you're doing before release, there's no way you could test every scenario and really truly understand the potential performance issues that could happen of something as huge as Microsoft 365. And so what a great way to irons in the forge to strengthen this. Once we get past this period, and now where everybody's working from home, and I don't know that it will ever adjust the numbers down. I think it's increased across the board usage of this kind of technology, but hopefully we just don't have a lot of the productivity features. But it also, my point, it speaks to the need to provide feedback back to Microsoft. It's not enough. You can't just sit and complain like, hey, this happened and I don't know what happened, or this was an unsatisfactory experience using this product or this service or this feature. You need to provide that back to Microsoft. You need to go and through logging a ticket, or with a user voice request, or to upvote something, or like some comment of as you're researching it and other people are having the same experience. Microsoft needs to understand the impact of some of these different pieces and provide that feedback. They take action based on the volume of responses that they get to certain features, whether it's positive or negative. So you need to be providing that real-time feedback back to Microsoft so that they can make improvements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a good point, that over the last 3 months, if you've noticed, or I've noticed at least, Microsoft has changed priorities on a lot of features due to the amount of feedback. So all of a sudden, over the last 3 months, everybody jumped on their platform. Because of that massive increase, everybody had stuff that they wanted different. And it seems like Microsoft got a ton of feedback all at once about, hey, we really need this, and this based on everybody working from home. And they rearranged some of their priorities in terms of features that were coming out and where they were working on certain features. And I think they got a lot of feedback over the last 3 months that maybe they hadn't previously been getting. So to continue to provide that feedback to them after this, to really make them aware of what people need and what they want, and just not say, oh, well, Microsoft's not going to listen to me.
Mm-hmm. Maybe to end this segment, that the quote that not everybody is familiar with, but it started with Satya Nadella mentioning this in an earnings call, I think in April, where he said that basically, like, the amount of usage increase and basically digital transformation that Microsoft saw over a 2-month period was what they predicted or forecasted for 2 years. And I still, that number, that really makes you more aware of the amount of change and adoption of this platform that has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, ready to keep going?
Yep.
It's playing up next. Oh, runs on trust. Was this another one of yours, Christian?
This one,
or is this yours, Martin?
I think it's an important section to have. I don't have a lot of
We've
comments.
also been doing a lot of work for many years on trust. In fact, Satya always leads his keynotes talking about how important trust and protection of your data is. And in the last few years and few months, more and more of the most security conscious organizations in the world, banks, healthcare organizations, governments, have moved their data to the Microsoft cloud because of the comprehensive approach we've taken to security and privacy and identity and a spectrum of compliance requirements. And I'd like to bring back Navjot again to talk about some of the security and compliance investments we're making. Navjot, welcome back.
Thank you, Jeff. So we know that as more of users are working from home, they're using Teams to collaborate and share information. Many of you are familiar with how you can use DLP to prevent sharing of sensitive information over emails and files. But now you can also use DLP to prevent sharing of sensitive information in Teams. Here I've created a DLP policy to prevent sharing of financial information over email, files, and team chats and channel messages. Once I create this policy and apply it, as a user, when I try to share a credit card number with Lynn to pay for a marketing campaign, you will notice that my message to her is blocked. DLP has detected that I'm trying to send a credit card number and it has blocked me from sending the message. I get a little tooltip that tells me why this message is blocked and what I can do about it. Using DLP for Microsoft 365, you have full control over how sensitive information is shared in your organization. Next, let me show you another way to protect your sensitive information. We know that as more and more users are working from home, it becomes even more important that your data is automatically protected, irrespective of where it's stored or where it travels. Using auto-labeling policies for Microsoft 365, you can automatically apply classification labels to your important data so that it is protected automatically. Here, I have created an auto-labeling policy to automatically apply the confidential label to any file that contains financial information like bank routing numbers and credit card numbers. This, in turn, will automatically RMS protect these files. As a user, you can also run your auto-labeling policies in a simulation mode so that you can see the impact of these policies, make any tweaks or changes before you apply the policy to the data in your organization. Using auto-labeling policies, you can be rest assured that all of your sensitive information is automatically protected without you or the user needing to take any further action. In my case, you will notice that this particular file has been automatically labeled confidential. The file has been labeled confidential because it contains financial information. It has some credit card numbers in it. So the system has automatically detected that, labeled the file confidential, and therefore it now has RMS protection on the file. So as a user, if I download the file or email it to somebody or share it with someone, your data will always be protected.
Thanks. It's great to see the innovation there. One of the things that I frequently hear come up is the safety and inclusion of conversations, as people are having more conversations at school and at work in Microsoft Teams, and those conversations are moderated. What's some of the work that we've got coming out to support, again, that safety and inclusion in our collaboration tools?
Yes, Jeff. Let me show you the new communication compliance feature in Microsoft 365. Microsoft Communication Compliance helps you foster a culture of inclusion and safety in your organization by helping you detect and prevent negative behaviors like harassment and bullying, which is super important as your users are working remotely. Here, I've created a policy to detect potential code of conduct violations in my organization. I've applied this policy to all the users in my organization across various ways of communication. This uses a ML-based system that can automatically detect patterns of harassment, threats, and even profanity across messages. In my organization, this policy has flagged a few Teams messages for potential threats and harassment. And right from here, quickly and easily, I can follow up and take appropriate action to stop this behavior and protect the culture of my organization.
All right. Yeah, there's Joe made a great comment in the chat. It was saying that that Teams was definitely lacking in features even months ago. It is there's always with the incredibly fast-paced innovation that's happening and all the releases, there's been a tremendous focus around a lot of these administrative capabilities. So Navjot talks about like the DLP updates. We've seen over recent months in Teams and SharePoint the sensitivity labels and other compliance and security capabilities. No longer, you're getting a much more robust admin experience, and you can even have that distributed management. You can go and create kind of role-based admin capabilities, but you're getting much more control out of the admin consoles, either the all-up Microsoft 365 admin console or in each respective workload, to be able to go in and automate some of these policies, as she was just showing, being able to get automatic notifications, have the AI pick up and identify when there are, whether it's, security breaches or when you get, against the policies that you're creating, the type of language that's being used in chats, in files, in the collaborations happening within the organization, to get notified and be able to take action, automate some of those actions. But just to be aware of that happening, so you can be much more proactive about, correcting the way that people are using the platform. It's really powerful. So it's exciting to see.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of good work that Microsoft's been doing in that area. And some people ask me what the difference is between Microsoft and another company that tends to create cloud-based productivity stuff. And one thing I like about Microsoft versus those other guys that also have a search engine that's really popular is those guys.
I don't know who you're talking about, Ben.
You don't know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, no.
I won't. I'll try not. I'll try to be more subtle or less subtle. But no, they make all their money off ads, right? I mean, one of their main drivers of business revenue is advertising, which means that it's to their benefit to know as much about you as possible. Where I feel like Microsoft is a little bit more focused on the enterprise. Advertising is not a primary source of revenue for them. So they seem to just have a little bit more vested interest in that security and that compliance standpoint, just due to their position within the market and where a lot of their revenue comes from.
Enterprise versus consumer.
Right.
Yep.
But there's a mixture, of course. Those two worlds have been started to mix more and more during the past decade. And there you see that a lot of enterprise technology has learned tricks from consumer technology and the other way around, maybe also, when you look at security and I have people with no tech experience using VPNs to block, search engine makers in advertising. So these worlds are lending from each other. But the key thing here, of course, is security and privacy, and of course we always want new features, and we don't want 4 video streams in Teams or 6 or 9 or 50. That's important, but the focus on security and privacy, of course, being pushed by data leaks and hacker attacks, this will stay the number one topic for most CIOs, for probably. Yeah.
And as I just
Right?
I just added to the chat, I don't think we should be afraid of the name. It's Voldemort, people. That's what we're talking about. Voldemort. Say his name and he loses power. So
Yeah. That's funny.
All right. Well, I say let's jump in. Let's see another section here.
Yeah, we've got a few more coming up here, so we'll see what's coming up next. Oh, communication. There were a bunch of new features here.
Yes, a few.
Graham, welcome.
Hey, Jeff. You're absolutely right. We hear from customers all the time that they love Teams because it helps people stay connected, and they just get more done when they have everything in a single place. And that has never been more important than right now, when so many of us are trying to work remotely. In response to the COVID thing, we've accelerated a whole bunch of features that'll make remote work easier for people. Really excited here to show you what we're going to be doing with, in particular, meetings. And, when we go to a lot of different meetings, you kind of need to show up a little differently, depending on whether you're leading the meeting, you're participating, or just observing it. And it's kind of hard to control exactly what the environment's going to be like. In Teams, you can adjust and control exactly how you're going to show up, including all the audio and video settings before you join it. So, make sure you look great and then hop right in. One of my favorite features is the ability to change your background. You can blur your background to sort of remove the distractions like your messy room or your random figurines that might be sitting on your desk. You can basically change your background to other custom things too. You can make it look a little more professional, like an office, or you can express your personality by uploading an image, say from your vacation. Now that you're ready to join, you can see all 9 participants simultaneously with our new 3x3 video grid. And we're working constantly to try to increase and expand the number of those simultaneous video feeds even more. So we also want to help people feel a little more included when they're in these meetings. It's tough doing these all remotely. So one of the best ways to do this is to turn on live captions.
We have built this feature for those that are deaf or hard of hearing, have different levels of language proficiency, or dialing in from a noisy environment. This makes sure that it's easy for everyone to follow along in the meeting. I've actually found myself turning on this by default so I can stay engaged in the conversation.
I turn this on all the time so I can catch up when it's noisy at home, the dogs are barking or the kids are going crazy, and I don't miss anything in the conversation. Speaking of inclusivity, we're also going to give participants a way to sort of signal that it's, they have something important to say. So you can see Bianca has her hand raised, and Aaron wants to raise his hand too. Now it's easier to make sure everybody's input is heard. So I'm sure we've all been in meetings where there's a lot of background noise too, and we're adding all sorts of AI capabilities that help people when they're typing loudly on their keyboard or working in an open space. Check it out.
Hey Bianca, can you help show me how Microsoft Teams uses background noise suppression to reduce background noise?
Hi, Aaron. Yeah, of course. So you can hear me clearly now, right? But say that we were in a lunch meeting and I needed to open this bag of popcorn. It's pretty noisy, right?
Yeah, it's super distracting. I can hear it loud and clear.
Right. So if I turn on noise suppression, it actually muffles that sound. Can't hear anything, right?
No, I can't hear it at all. That was amazing.
It's pretty cool.
Thanks, Bianca.
So these are just some of the awesome new features we're working on to make sure that people stay connected and stay productive when they're working apart. Jeff, back to you.
All right. There we go. We're back.
Yep. So I have the opposite issue is that usually when I'm kicking off a live stream or something as we're getting ready for a webinar or a broadcast to start, and I'm playing my music that I want people to hear, and you get this kind of muted, muffled. You like hear some of the beats, like so. I need to fix my setup so that I force people to listen to my music. But other than that, I think it's a fantastic feature.
It is. I also saw today that it is available in stream, so you can even use it on existing videos. So if you upload a video to stream now, you can also put this noise cancellation on there, and it's very useful machine learning technology to improve the quality of video, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It's a feature. I haven't tried it or used it much. I haven't looked for it in my tenant either, but I'd imagine it would help. Then people don't have to hear my kids fighting in the background, right?
Yeah. As Mark just said, less concerned with the bag of popcorn, more concerned with the dogs. That's my specific issue. My home office is in the basement. My front door is like right up there, and so the doorbell rings. Somebody knocks on the door. Somebody drops off an Amazon package. The dogs go crazy, and it's right above me, and I've got a vent right there. So having that little bit of technology remove that is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have a whole lot of other comments, I don't think, on Teams features. I mean, the 9x9 video is nice, or 9x9. No, everybody wants 9x9. The 3x3 to get 9. I have seen that 7x7 is coming. I've started to see some articles trickle out confirming that the 7x7 video is coming, but I haven't seen any time frames on that. So I don't know. I can't imagine it would be that much more difficult, but I'm not a developer. I say all that stuff is easy. It's just adding more videos, right?
There might be some compression needed if you have 50 feeds that you need to progress. So I think there's some high quality way that you bundle those 50 video streams, because it's always one from the person who is broadcasting himself, and then 49 coming in, and that protocol, that layering, that's probably people have been working on it, but I have no idea how hard that's going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think Valerie makes that great point about, how much bandwidth will that use? That's just something to think about with all these features too, is not that Teams uses a lot of bandwidth today. So adding a bunch of
I think it won't. I think it should not take additional bandwidth. I think it's the same video feed that you're getting, but it's on the back end, on the cloud, it's being chopped up in all those different video streams, I guess. So
yeah, that's my assumption, is that it's still taking your outgoing bandwidth, and then it's doing all the processing everything on the back end, and it doesn't really change the bandwidth at all. Which is why with a lot of these features too, especially like even some of the compliance features, when you start having the automatic labeling of documents and some of these features that tend to be a little bit more processor intensive, processing audio like that, sometimes trickle up into those higher SKUs of Microsoft 365 or Office 365, is because where the cost of those really comes into play is on the compute that's required up in Microsoft 365 to do all that work.
Right. Which is the reason why a lot of the AI machine learning features are cloud-based, and they're not specifically on-prem solutions. I was thinking of people complain that are new in the Teams Live, doing a live session and wanting to utilize some of the transcription and translation services, and questions like, well, there's like a 20-second lag between me talking and what's being shown, and it's just an adjustment. It's like, well, yeah, but it needs time to process things, and it'll get better. It's like, but yeah, there is there's definitely more compute power that's needed for some of these core capabilities, which is not to say you're getting the presentation layer on your screen. This is all happening up in those servers, which is why you have the scale of the cloud to be able to do a lot of those capabilities.
Yeah, and in this particular example, it's Azure Media Services, which is automatically converting your broadcast to different stream qualities and make those available depending on your bandwidth that you would choose. You will get like a low or medium or high quality feed, and all that progressing happens in real time, but needs some time to start up.
Yeah. Do you know if that background audio removing feature is there yet? Somebody asked if that feature's been rolled out yet. I don't honestly know.
I think I saw it this week. Yeah. So I noticed it for the first time today in Microsoft Stream, but I haven't think I saw something in the Teams client too this morning. So, and it did got released in last week's Message Center update.
Okay.
So it will probably be, it's rolled out, and it differs, of course, per tenant when you will receive the feature.
Right, and it might still
and
be
that
in like
will-
some of the first release tenants or whatever that term has changed to now. But that being said, you should see it soon then.
Yeah. Another example where we need to adopt constantly, the targeted release.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
And another one that I very quickly want to point out, which is close to this topic, is the with Microsoft Live meetings. This month, we will be getting what is called NDI support, Network Device Interface, which is extremely cool because that will allow us, if you would produce a live event, to also include multiple people in the session and switch multiple cameras, where you're now limited to switching between one or two, and the amount, so you can have more presenters in a Microsoft Live event and allow them to bring their own video stream.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm curious to see how that NDI works. So I read a couple articles about it. Is it going to be incoming NDI video? So if you have a camera that broadcasts NDI, it's coming into Teams? Or is it the ability for Teams to output NDI video into another third-party software? For instance, we're using Wirecast. So Teams to output NDI video to be consumed by Wirecast? Or is it both? I couldn't tell from what I've read. Or don't we know?
It's the first because using encoders, you can already do the second.
Okay.
But I'm curious to see it too. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm thinking it will support multiple types of cameras and remote cameras. And
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that as well, because we're again we're using Teams meetings, which is just it's a different. I'd prefer to use and be able to publish out there for anonymous access a Teams live session for all those reasons. But I want to have that Teams meeting, multiple screens, multiple participants in there, do this panel type activity, and you just can't do it.
Right. Essentially what we're doing right now, only use Teams instead of Wirecast on the back end, because frankly, to do what we're doing today, we couldn't do it with Teams the way the features are set up today.
And I'm assuming if we have that ability, then we'll, well, I'm not going to assume that. Never mind. I'm going to halt there. I know we've got more. Are we also covering kind of the back half of the intelligent content?
I can't remember. Should we just keep going through our keynote? Yeah. All right. Let's keep going with the next segment.
There's a lot more. Yeah.
Right. We'll see what's there. Oh, SharePoint. There were a bunch of things here.
Next up, we're going to transition from communications to content. Many of you know with SharePoint, we've tried to have the most flexible content management solution in the industry that spans files, lists, sites, and now what we call knowledge with something called Project Cortex. Probably it wouldn't be a SharePoint event without me answering the question I've been asked for many years, which is SharePoint an app or a platform? And I'll answer it the way I've always answered it, which it is both. SharePoint's a platform that delivers intelligent content services. And we do have a killer app for it in these great SharePoint websites, and you can see them on lookbook.microsoft.com. But SharePoint's also the platform by which we serve up files experiences, list experiences, knowledge experiences across Microsoft 365, including Teams, and in your own custom apps. And so I'm really excited to talk about the next steps of these content-centric experiences with Omar Shaheen, who's the Director of Program Management for the team. And Omar, welcome. Why don't you start it off showing us maybe OneDrive to kick it off?
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here. The first thing I'm going to show is a feature that Jeff and I actually talked about 4 years ago. And it's wonderful that we're able to deliver something our customers really, really want, which is this feature we call Add to OneDrive. Adding shortcuts to OneDrive is the capability for customers to add shared content alongside their own. That means instead of looking for content based on who shared it and how someone shared it with them, they can access the files they care about directly in their OneDrive. So let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to go over to my shared with me list, and you're going to see a folder there called RFP alongside other folders. These have all been shared to me. I'm going to go ahead and select this folder that Adele happened to share and select the command called add shortcut to my files. When I go ahead and click that, that folder is now going to be inserted into my OneDrive. Previously, everything in my OneDrive was just content that I created, but now I can see content other people created, making it really easy for me to get back to it. When I navigate into that folder, you can see all the same content I would have seen had I navigated to that folder elsewhere. But the convenience of having it in my OneDrive makes it easier and faster. This also means that when I synchronize files into File Explorer or access files in OneDrive in Teams or my mobile device, I will see those same folders. So here I am in File Explorer. I'm going to go ahead and click on that RFP folder, and there you can see all the same things I just showed you on the website. We think customers will love the ability to get easy access to all of the shared content that they want to. Back to you, Jeff.
Yes, we've been talking about that one for a while, and I think it is the last big missing piece in making access to all your files across all your devices super, super simple. But we're also making some really big announcements around lists. It's a capability that's been in SharePoint for a while. We've given it an engaging new experience, and we're letting you access it from anywhere. Could you show us the new list experience we just announced?
Absolutely. This month is one of the happiest months in my career because we get to launch a new product, which is Microsoft Lists. Lists is our newest M365 application and capability built on SharePoint lists. And so our SharePoint customers are very familiar with it. But we're introducing a new destination for lists to make it easy to get back to all of your lists, as well as a brand new mobile application. I thought I would quickly flip through some of the great new experiences you can build with lists. So first, we're going to take a look at an issue tracker, which is a great way for me to organize information from across the team and see if people are blocked. Next is a list where you can see it in a calendar view, which is a great way to organize things like events or conferences and see items in the calendar. After that, you're going to see this new list type, which is a gallery showing a list of all the assets, which are devices in our team that we need to track. We need to know things like who's checked them out, the manufacturer, and serial number. And this makes it really easy for people to get a sense of who got what device. And finally, you can see lists built into Microsoft Teams because we want to make it possible to do things like project tracking directly in the place that you're collaborating with your team. There is so much more to see and learn about lists, and I encourage everybody to go check out the videos on YouTube and the blog post. But I'm also going to show off another great new feature of lists, which is the ability to create gallery views. And so here we're taking a look at a list, which is we're using to organize an event, and it's laid out in traditional column view. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the gallery. And now you can see a list of cards, which makes it easier to organize some of the information. But even better than being able to see these cards is being able to customize these cards. And so I'm going to go ahead and select an item in the menu that says Format Current View. Once I select Format Current View, I'm going to be given the Tile Designer, which provides a simple Wysiwyg way of organizing information. And so one of the things I'll do is turn on the image column, which brings in the images associated with this list. It's a great way to identify the cards. I can go ahead and toggle the preview, and I can also reorder it so it shows up at the very top, which is where I really want it to be, above all of the items. I can go ahead and enable and disable other items, show things like speaker user tiles so that I can see the people that are speaking in the events, and enable other columns. I can also hide the labels for the cards, increasing the information density and making it easier to consume this data. So back to you, Jeff.
I love the new list experience as well, Omar. I can't wait to see more people have access to it in the preview coming up. Okay, so we've talked about files and lists, but what about SharePoint sites? What are some of the most recent things we're doing to make it easier to create more engaging SharePoint sites to inform employees and help them discover knowledge in their organizations?
There's really nothing as simple as a website to communicate and discover content. Today, many organizations are rediscovering the importance of having a branded destination for engaging their employees. We recently launched a brand new product to help organizations get a beautifully branded website, and that is called home sites. I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the new capabilities with home sites. Here we are looking at the Contoso Electronics home site that's called The Landing. You'll notice that the URL for the site is a special URL. We call it the root site, and it lets the organization name .sharepoint.com point to a site of their choice, in this case, the root site.
Cool stuff.
That was really loud. Wake up, everybody.
I love Microsoft Lists.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. I have very mixed feelings on Microsoft Lists.
I think it's awesome. But
So
I just made a comment really quick. I just pointed out Contoso is the least secure company in the world. Everybody is constantly sharing their snapshots of their data of their company. There's problems. They need to fire their security guy.
their security team is not very good. Okay, so I'm going to preface my list with I love lists. I love what they're doing with it. I wish they would have focused less on the using Microsoft Lists as task lists or to-do lists, given all of the other places you can track tasks.
Amen to that. Yes, it's. I think that anytime Microsoft need to be thinking of the automatic, people will say, well, which tool do I use when? What? Because is this the same? That was the first question people asked. Is this the same announcement as the Tasks app? Like, no, they're different things. And so you have the Tasks app and To Do and Planner, and now you have lists. So I think you're spot on. It was the wrong use case to begin with. Introduce.
Right product, wrong messaging when they first announced it.
Yep, agreed.
But yeah, in terms of the product itself. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Martin.
No, it's just one of these pieces with SharePoint, which like the very early releases. This is like 22 years old. This CD, I just picked it from the back, which was the beta of SharePoint 2001, and that had lists. And in the last 2 decades,
right,
the key functionality of lists didn't change that much. It's like the core, like the 80% has always been the same. And of course, we got modern since a couple of years, but this is really extending finally after 2 decades on that potential.
I like Andrew's comment. Says, Microsoft again calling different things the same name. Yeah, I think the original name that they had for this, the longer version, was Microsoft Teams Groups Lists, and then they had the like the on-prem or online version, and you always have to wait for the SP2 Human Ear Edition, yeah. But I think this is another question that people ask right away too. Speaking of the Lists app, is well, does this replace my need for using SharePoint lists? Just to be clear, that this was developed by the people that own SharePoint lists. This is an evolution. The next, you've taken all that learning, they've built this solution. I think it's fantastic. Naming, branding, the messaging aside, when we see this, it's incredibly powerful. Thing about this too is most people, we've seen this transition over the last few years for organizations that have been heavy into SharePoint as their portal, as that collaboration destination for their organization. But most end users don't think of it that way. It's like, I'm not going to go in and create something inside of SharePoint. It's more of the power user and admin, the IT pro activity inside of SharePoint. This is a much more end user centric scenario. That there are scenarios that it supports. It's meant to be for once it's enabled. If you have access to that, of course, if you have the right licensing, the ability to go and create that, but to go and create and track things that you might not otherwise do inside of SharePoint. So this is I think it's going to have a much broader use than SharePoint did inside of most organizations.
Yes. My biggest question, does Microsoft Lists removed the 5,000 item query limit on a list. Has anybody heard?
Of course, in modern, it's always been a view limit, right?
Right.
So,
well, and in modern it sort of works, but I still hit those things where like I'll be in modern and I'll go do a certain filter and it's like you've hit your view item limit. Even though modern is supposed to alleviate that, I still have it's like randomly pops up here and there for me.
True. But on the other side, colleagues of mine are building solutions with millions of items in lists, and they work pretty good.
Yeah, and I have a few lists that have like 1.8 million items in it, and I will say 90% of the time it works well, but there's still those times, or if you're working with like PowerShell, if you're writing PowerShell or writing some queries against the API, you can still, I've still seen places where that keeps surfacing, and I would love to see it just completely eliminated.
How much more videos do we have?
I don't know.
We have two more. We should have two more. I was just about to say that. So for folks that are watching the schedule, so up next is so after the keynote I guess is completed, but you have Chris McNulty and Naomi Moneypenny that are going to be talking about Project Cortex, which is the next clip that we're going to. We should if this is the right order of these clips.
Let me.
So we should be showing and talking about. So if you, again, it's pre-recorded, it's out there. You can jump over if you want to get from the horse's mouth from Microsoft on Project Cortex. That's what's up next. You can go, you click on that other link, or we're going to talk about it and give you that summary version of it right now.
Right, except that I started fast forwarding. I messed my video up. Keep talking for a minute while I find the right spot.
Right. One other thing about Microsoft Lists that I'm very curious about is the mobile app, which will be released this summer.
Yes.
Yeah. So
the apps have been fantastic. And I think in a lot of cases, and we didn't talk about some of the other capabilities that have come out, like the really cool other things that have been happening over the last couple months, like the Yammer app for Teams to be able to push Teams and Yammer over to Outlook. Some really cool cross workload capabilities that are here or are coming very quickly, which is, again, going back to that question of which tool to use when becomes less of an issue where your organization, there are some organizations that are very email centric, keep working with Outlook with Exchange. Some that are very social collaboration centric, keep working with Yammer. Some that are very project based, keep using Teams. And of course, more process workflow centric, keep using SharePoint. But it's becoming easier to be able to work across these workloads, pull people into conversations and collaborations when necessary without having to jump between applications or workloads to get stuff done. So that is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we watch Project Cortex? I was kind of making fun of Project Cortex because I have yet to see a live demo of this that's not just slides on a screen. To be fair, it is coming. It's not just sometime maybe.
Yeah.
But yes, let's see what's coming with Cortex.
And it's coming soon-ish.
Sometime maybe. Soonish. Maybe.
Definitely sometime maybe. All right.
We want to go a step beyond because we know a lot of sites exist to help people navigate the organization's knowledge and expertise. And so we thought now was the time to grab the AI technology across Microsoft, apply it in a secure way to the graph, and expose all this. It's almost like SharePoint's generating your intranet for you and connecting it to all these experiences. We announced this last year at Ignite with something called Project Cortex. And maybe, Omar, you could share us some of what's about to come out with that major project for us.
Yeah, what you said is totally spot on, Jeff. We're seeing more and more organizations generating unstructured data and placing that in Microsoft 365. And so we're really trying to take the best of what we have in AI and ML to create knowledge out of that information and help give employees a way to contribute to that knowledge. And so I'm going to show a couple of examples of what that will look like in a few short weeks when we release Project Cortex for our first customers. So we're going to start our demo in Microsoft Teams. And in Microsoft Teams, I'm chatting with my colleague, Emily Braun. And you'll notice that there's a couple of keywords that are highlighted in this chat: Project Core and Mark 8. I'm going to go ahead and hover on one of these words. And what you're going to see is the new topic card. And the new topic card appears and shows me information about this topic. I can see things like the description. I can see an acronym, so it knows that there are other ways to describe this topic. I can also see people and resources that are associated with this topic directly inside the place that I'm working, which is Microsoft Teams. But I can click on that topic and get taken to a topic page, which is a page in SharePoint. And this page shows a lot more information about the topic. I can see the description and where it came from, in this case, a document. I can see the people associated with the topic, as well as all the resources. And as I scroll down and investigate more about this topic, I will also see information such as discovered resources, which are all the stream videos, the PowerPoint presentations, and the files that we've discovered and believe are associated with this topic, allowing you to curate that information. We also have the topic graph, which shows all of the related topics that exist in the organization that are either curated and manually created or suggested, so that I can go ahead and add content to those topics. This gives me a way of seeing the relationships of topics, but also navigating from one topic to another. Here I've selected the next topic, which is Mark 8. And just like before, you see a very similar topic page, and you can see that this information was gleaned from a document. Then I can click over to the Knowledge Center and see all the topics that I've contributed to, as well as all the discovered topics that I have access to in my information, so that it's secure. Now, I'm going to end by going back to another product I use, which is Outlook. And here in Outlook, you can also see the word core is highlighted. And just like in Teams, when I hover over that word, I also get the topic card. But more than that, I can also hover on a person and see the people card. And we've also added a new feature to the people card, which is the topics that this individual has contributed to. And so a big part of the value of Project Cortex is making the experience work in the places that you work today, bringing that knowledge and learning to everybody in Microsoft 365. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Omar. Great stuff for files, for lists, for sites, in those standalone experiences, in SharePoint sites, and increasingly integrated in Microsoft Teams.
Okay, back to our tile. There we go. Project Cortex.
So what were you saying about that before?
Sometime maybe live demos. You mean none of those were live demos that we just saw?
Yeah, and I've said since this was announced, and I think even here, Microsoft said, look, there's been attempts to do something similar to this for many, many years. And for those of us that have worked in the knowledge management, information management space, most of my career, I've been, in this, broader space. We've attempted to build similar solutions. Now, as we were just talking about in the last segment, we didn't have the power, the scalability of the cloud. We didn't have, technology wasn't where it is now to be able to enable this kind of capability. So I'm very excited to see this. Now I've withheld a lot of my feedback on it, Ben, exactly for that reason, because it's limited. I think there's maybe 75 companies that are on the pilot, the second or the third wave of the pilot that's going on now. And so until I can kind of get my hands on it and really see and understand the curation experience, the administrative experience behind it, not a lot I can say other than I'm excited to see it.
Right. And I think that's my take, is in concept and in theory, this is a great idea. It's something we've needed for a long time, is kind of essentially that centralized term store for those that come from a SharePoint perspective, or some centralized tagging mechanism across the entire platform. That is not simple to do. And what they have demonstrated from what I can see on the outside, takes a lot of work and a lot of horsepower on the computing AI back end of it. And again, having that central term store bridging all of the different cloud services, this is no small feat from my perspective, from the outside, kind of looking in at it.
Absolutely. It's
not
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you ask me, of course, what Christian just mentioned, the whole knowledge management part of it, I'm very, very curious and indeed getting my hands on it. But I would say one of the biggest impact it could have for customers is this auto tagging, what you're just talking about, Ben, and what Naomi Moneypenny refers to as machine teaching. So based using documents and driving the machine learning engine documents, where you would say this document is about this topic and this document is about that topic, and then having the ability for the algorithm to once you've done all this teaching, to automatically start tagging all your content. Users are going to be so happy. Well, due to the search results. And
well, that's why it kind of 2 points there. Building on that is there's always been. It's kind of funny because in the SharePoint space, when I got involved and started speaking at events and things, my primary topics were around metadata management and taxonomy and building. It was it's the same thing I was talking about in the late 90s when I was talking about portal development and project and portfolio management, was metadata and taxonomy and how come search doesn't work? Like, well, the fundamentals of being able to classify and manage that data. And there needs to be some degree, if you make it too heavy-handed on what the user is tasked with doing, they're not going to do it. The default is that if you have an intake form, for example, where I'm archiving content, if I've got to upload dozens or hundreds of documents and there's an intake form where it's requiring me to be very explicit in the tags to classify this content so that people in the future can find it. But me as an end user, like, I don't have time for this. I'll just give everything like these 3 keywords, the minimum that's needed, upload the stuff in there, which degrades the search experience. So it has to be a balance between manual activities, the ability for end users still to go and add those long tail tags and things that are very specific to that content, as well as automated and heavier on the automation side of that, where the machine learning understands this is the type of content in context to this project. Therefore, these similar keywords are relevant to this based on the context of the content and all those kinds of things. It's then classifying that content. And where I say that where I still want to see behind the scenes how Cortex actually does is the curation process. What is that going to be then required? What is that experience for me as an admin? I now see the intake of hundreds of documents per day in my organization here, this regional organization, hundreds of documents. What's that cleanup process look like? How is it going to accurately go and truly reflect what this content is about, the context around it, and what is it like for me to be able to find those things, make corrections, and to clean a lot of that up, to apply those long tail tags to it. So I'm excited about the capability. It's going to reduce a lot of that manual effort, but what that experience really looks like, I mean, where I can't wait to see it.
If it does what it does, it's going to be, changing the way we work. It will have a big impact on productivity of people and knowledge management.
Right.
Very much looking forward to it.
I think as an admin managing it, your work is going to go from what we have now, where a lot of times we're feeding metadata in. We're creating metadata. We're defining choice columns. We're defining SharePoint columns. We're adding managed metadata. So all of this stuff is going to be curated. And like you said, you're going to now have to resolve all of it. You look at certain companies and the amount of acronyms and different spellings they have of certain terms. And if all of this is automatically getting propagated together, somehow all of that's going to have to be resolved into a single term. A lot like we do have the synonyms that you can define now in the term store, only you're going to have to go in and try to figure out how to resolve that. That whole aspect of it, you applied and you hinted at it too, Christian. It's going to be interesting to see how that all works on the back end.
Right. I think that there's it's not like I'm negative on the future of AI and the capabilities. I think that actually Naomi and I a few years ago had an argument over what AI is able to do and how closely it will map like the human brain and the decisions that we make. I mean, you think about the complexity of how we make decisions and the sense of smell. Very difficult for AI to go in there. And the fact that certain memories and how I respond to something is triggered by your olfactory system is incredibly powerful. It's one of the more powerful triggers of memory. How AI is going to replicate the fact that I might bring up and remember some memory in life based on a smell. It sounds like I'm getting way off base. I probably am out of this, but I'm trying to say is that the complexity of how we add context to content and memory, things that are relevant are I've not seen anything in AI that can replicate those kind of connections that the human brain goes and makes. So my point, and I'll wrap up my soapbox, is that while I think it's incredibly powerful to think about being able to go and automate to some degree, there have to be still, to your point, Ben, how am I going to go in and clean all that up from an admin experience? What is that actually going to look at? How is that going to queue that up? I mean, I can see that it would, where there's duplicates, where there's overlaps, that I go into my inbox every day. It might automatically create tasks that I log in the morning. Hey, there are 20 different items that I need to go in there and clean up. So the system should be self-aware and be able to automate, create workflows that before it's live and everybody sees it, that the system is coming and saying, can you please validate the automations that we've put in place? It should be part of that provisioning process that is put in place. And I would see that there would be admin controls over that process. But again, I want to see it.
Yeah.
What I have seen in demos is particularly close to what Power Apps AI Builder provides, where, for example, you put in like images or documents, and document by document you teach the keyword, and then at some point it will do suggestions, and then you could do basically, if you're using, for example, Azure Bot Framework, where you're doing those building those intents of a user speaking. It's the same pattern where you're gonna say as an administrator, like, yeah, this is correct, and here you got it wrong, and so document for document you will be teaching and improving by just saying yes or no. It's like no hot dog, yeah, there's a hot dog in there, yes or no. Same pattern to teach that. And I saw some demos, and I can really imagine how that would work.
Yeah.
So that brings up another interesting point that I think people should start preparing themselves for. Is kind of what we've alluded to. This is very complex, which means it's going to require a lot of compute. You referred to AI Builder. That starts, base price for AI Builder is $500 per month. Project Cortex is not just going to be something that is going to be free and turned on in every tenant based on how complex and how much compute I can imagine is going to be required for this. So I'm also very curious to see what the final pricing and licensing for this looks like, because that has not been brought up at all that I'm aware of.
I think there's some speculation that it might be part of like the E5, so it's going to be that premium licensing. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we don't know. But I think, but on that point, there's the other side of it. I think that we're also going to see a slew of other features that will be baked into what we already own, the licenses that we have. Cortex is like a tremendous R&D effort where there will be natural innovations that it will enable, or just the fact that they've created the technology that will improve. There will be this kind of trickle down benefit across the platform. So yeah,
right. Like maybe you'll get some of the centralized stuff. You'll get a centralized management of your terms, but some of the auto discovery, the stuff that's going to be more processor intensive, maybe some additional add-ons and licensing. But I agree, you'll start seeing it. I would imagine that's where some of the centralized term store and some of those updates are going to come from.
Yeah,
correct.
Joe, countdown to the E7 license.
Sorry. All right, so we have one more section, one more video segment, right?
I think so. It says there's 10 minutes left. I think it's developer-ish. So we'll play it and we'll keep going.
Okay.
Here it goes.
All right.
Background music.
Hit it.
Developers. Back to the Balmer days.
I love this company.
We very much see Microsoft 365 not just as a collaborative solution, but as an intelligent platform for a range of collaborative applications. And I've always tried to think about our customization and development for 3 tiers of audience. First, how can we really make it simple for an end user to customize their team's environment, their SharePoint environment? Second, for people who want to build more tailored business processes, we've been working for the last few years across Microsoft with the Power Platform team. You probably just saw some big announcements from us in the integration of Power Platform with Microsoft 365 Build. And lastly, we want to give full extensibility to developers at both the data layer and the user experience layer. The data layer, we have the Microsoft Graph. The user experience layer, we have the SharePoint framework. And we're doing more and more, again, to bridge that SharePoint framework so you can build these extended pages and solutions in the browser, but also inside Microsoft Teams. And to show you a few of the things we're doing for developers, I think we'll start with the no-code, low-code scenarios. Let me bring up Ed Averett, the GPM for extensibility. Ed, welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. The Microsoft 365 platform is all about building great solutions that are secure and compliant. This is true whether you're an IW leveraging low-code, you're an enterprise dev working across multiple stacks in IT, or a professional dev building apps and services for the ecosystem. What we've all seen over the past few months is not only do you need to build a great solution, it needs to live in teams, because that's where we're working and collaborating today. Sue mentioned earlier that we've actually seen a huge surge in companies needing to both communicate and support their employees in a crisis. Low-code has a really big part to play here. In March, Microsoft released the Crisis Communication app, which brings together Power Apps, Power Automate, SharePoint lists, all sitting inside Teams. And I'm really excited to show you how that's actually helping companies out there today. So what you're seeing here is the Crisis Communication app as a Teams personal app. Every employee in the company can stay informed and ask for help. Now, all these pieces below, news, tips, FAQ, links, and contacts are powered by the exact same SharePoint list that Omar mentioned earlier. This means that any IW can easily update these, as well as it can be reused all across Microsoft 365. But the Crisis Communication app is also about real-time support. Here you can see in the FAQ list, I can request a headset or monitor to work from home. And this is going to leverage Power Automate and Teams messaging to do that. So let me go ahead and request a headset. And this sends it off to the crisis response team. Luckily, I'm a member of the crisis response team. So let's see what that looks like on the other side. So now I'm switching out of the app, which everyone in the company has access to the channel where a small set of us have access to respond to requests. There you go. You actually see the message that I just posted from the app. Given I asked for it, I'll let someone else on the team respond to it and approve my headset request. But this is just a great example of how Microsoft is bringing all these pieces of technology together to support you during this time of crisis. Over 3,000 companies have deployed the crisis communication app into Teams in the last month alone. Now, when we look beyond low code at enterprise dev, we have to talk about SharePoint. SPFX has had great success. It has reached millions of users through enterprise dev and system integrators as a simple and fast way to build web parts and pages with thousands of open source samples out on GitHub. But it's really been transitioning to also come into Teams. And I really want to show you how the SharePoint framework and Teams work great together. So here in SharePoint, you can see this is the sales lead SPFX solution. Not only does it access SharePoint data, it's talking to Azure ML to do predictive leads. It can also call external APIs and anywhere in the Microsoft Graph. And this has full admin governance in there. Now, the power of this solution is it exists as a web part right here. It can exist as a full page app in SharePoint, but it also can be directly hosted as a tab or personal app in Teams. And coming this summer, SPFX solutions are coming to AppSource, so any company in the world can both try or buy SPFX-based solutions. Now, when we look at the last piece of the puzzle with ProDev, we really have to talk about Microsoft Graph. Microsoft Graph is all about the data and signals that are both produced in the graph and as you use throughout M365. And the goal over the last year has been to make it both easier to use the Graph API and more feature-rich. Let me show you a little bit of what's going on in graph development today. Here's the new UI for Graph Explorer. It's gotten quite a refresh. Now, my favorite feature in here is permissions. Now, instead of going back and forth between REST APIs and documentation, I can see automatically what permissions are needed for any API call I make, and I can add directly to my app. But there's actually more than just tooling going on here. Let me show you some of the new features that are coming to Microsoft Graph. One of the big ones is following. Now, what following does, and you can see in the SharePoint site, is that I followed two sites that are very important to me. In Microsoft 365, I can follow lists, I can follow docs, I can follow sites. And this is a concept we think is really powerful for apps. Now, if I switch back to Graph Explorer, I can do a simple HTTP GET, and there you go. You can actually see those same two sites in Graph Explorer. And I can add to them just as easily. Let's do a simple HTTP POST. And there's the results right there. And just to show you it going live, here's actually the SharePoint site with that site added to following. This is just a few of the features that just showed up in the Microsoft Graph today. Over the summer, you'll see more with sharing links and more coming from Project Cortex with things like term store and content type. There's never been a better time to start developing with the Microsoft Graph. Back to you, Jeff.
I'm really excited to see the kinds of solutions people build with what Ed just shared.
All
well,
right.
That was a kind of an abrupt ending to this. I guess Jeff had nothing more to say at that point.
I guess not. I don't think we have any more. Yep, that was the end of our segment. I did look. I looked at the time on the video. So
all right, excellent.
It's really cool stuff. So if I want to point out two things that they were talking about, of course, it's the ever-growing extensions on the Graph API, which I think it was like 2015 when back then called the Office 365 Unified API was launched at Build 2015, and so this proxy to all your data in Office 365 is growing, and now we have this the Microsoft Graph, and it's an amazing ability for developers to hook into the data and services which are provided by Microsoft 365. So, yeah, curious about you, Ben. What are your what do you like best about the changes that we've seen in the last year?
So from a developer standpoint, I don't have a lot of input because I don't develop. I go find other people to develop for me. But I do agree, like, all you hear about now is the Graph API. Like, it's not, let's go develop against Exchange, or let's go develop against SharePoint, or let's go develop against Teams. It's go develop against the Graph API. So my limited experience of the Graph is I love to see the growth, and I feel like kind of from the outside looking in, it definitely makes it easier for developers because now they really are, let's just go look at the Graph API. We don't have to go learn all these other APIs and all these other endpoints we have to connect to. It brings together what I love about Microsoft 365 and Office 365 is the unified integration between all of these products that at one point in time were independent silos in an on-premises environment. And I think the Graph API is kind of a proof, a reiteration of that from the developer standpoint that this is turning into one product or a seamless integration between a bunch of products that you never really had in an on-premises world. And I think that's the power of the platform.
Yeah, and you think about it from, one, probably the most important scenario for most organizations from the search experience, having access to, one API. And this is, again, another example of where you need to provide your feedback to Microsoft about what is still missing, what you need, what's required. But from search is a great example. There was talk years ago. I had a side conversation, in fact, I think last week, was talking with somebody about search and about so back in 2008 when Fast Search was acquired by Microsoft. And there was, when it was still a separate server install for those on-prem environments. And then it was integrated in with, I think 2010, where you saw some of the first integrations and it was expanded upon and Fast really became part of the core capabilities in 2013 and kind of forwarded with SharePoint. But was this idea of this federated search experience. And there was talk at that time about, hey, look, I can go and build into my SharePoint portal a search that would bring back in the search results everything that's in SharePoint, as well as everything that's in Exchange, as well as everything that would be in these other environments. So it's really cool to see that kind of, the expansion of the API to start enabling some of these capabilities from a search standpoint that we talked about 10 years ago.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And especially cross services. Ben.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I know we're supposed to go until 11:30. I don't know what's going to happen to the stream, if it's going to get cut off or if Mark will just let us talk for as long as we want to. But if we do get cut off, I want to thank everybody for coming to this 2-hour session of listening to us. I don't know that I could listen to myself for 2 hours. But it's been fun. I have seen some comments that people want to do more of these, so we'll keep talking for a little bit longer, but if we get cut off, go jump in the other sessions and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yeah. Well, so now we're in the behind the scenes.
We're in the behind the scenes
segment of our extended version of this, but kind of on that point, and Andrew just asked, like, regarding search, is there not a performance hit on this, or would there be of this experience? I don't know. I was talking more just about the extensibility via the API, having access to data cross workload and having it in context, so tied together. So the idea of like the Office 365 group being that, that database key that ties together content in each workload, in Exchange, in Teams, in SharePoint, in Yammer, and wherever that content is something that's relatively new. I hear from, again, I'm not known for my developer capabilities because there aren't any developer capabilities. But I do hear from people that are saying, like, I'd love to be able to go and create something, to do something more configured, personalized for our environment. Like, but we only have part of the data in the API and the Graph API today. And I really wish Microsoft would do that. And my response is always the same: is, have you gone and requested that from Microsoft? Have you posted that in user voice? Have you used the specific examples of what you're trying to do within your company or industry? What are those specific needs? Like, go and post it. Because, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it you only need to have 5 upvotes in user voice for Microsoft to actually go and review that request? It's a really low bar to get Microsoft. It might be 10. But you can go and add something. So some feature that's missing, you go add it into user voice. share that out with your Twitter followers, within the Microsoft Tech Community website. Like, go post it, say, hey, we really need this feature. Please go upvote for my feature. And you get 5-10 upvotes, and Microsoft will officially review that and potentially respond to that publicly. And a lot of times their responses are, hey, this is already part of the roadmap. It's further down, or it's not yet. We're going to review that, but they'll respond to it.
Yeah. Shoot, get permission to send it out to everybody in your company. If it's something you need for your company, get permission from whoever you need to send out an email and say, hey, we really want to roll this feature out. Go vote for it and get Microsoft's attention. I'm also shocked at the number of times I need a feature and I go look on user voice and somebody has already put it out there, and I just have to upvote it. Andrew also said there would have to be a performance hit or limit with the amount of data cross-search. It might hammer the back end. So, Andrew, that's the beauty of the cloud, is we don't care, frankly. That's no longer our problem. That's Microsoft's problem. Kind of like your SharePoint databases. I used to care about SQL servers and SQL Server performance and SharePoint database size and drive striping and all of that. Now I don't care. I let Microsoft handle the back end and the performance. I'm sure there's a performance hit, but the nice thing is we don't really have to worry about it when it's the cloud. But that's also the reason we'll never see a lot of this come to on-prem environments, is because your on-prem environment's not going to be able to handle the compute that's required on the back end.
And the API supports things like paging and chunking and how you could get the data. So there, of course, the API makes sure that you can get large amounts. And of course, if you will do certain actions, there will be throttling. But if you stick to the patterns, you're going to be fine.
Yep. If you misbehave, Microsoft will throttle you. I've been throttled.
Absolutely. Is this the end that we want to talk about Graph? Because there was, in this last segment, there's another topic that I would really love to touch, which is SharePoint Framework.
This is the after show. You can talk about whatever you want to now.
After hours. That's right. Let your hair down.
You're just keeping me from my vacation.
One.
Yes. At this point in time, you're the only thing standing between me and vacation, Martin.
Oh, gee. Okay, I'm gonna be brief.
No, you're fine. Talk about it. Go for it.
Omer mentioned SharePoint Framework, SPFX, and one important thing he mentions is that it will be possible soon to have your SharePoint Framework extensions being put into the App Source marketplace. So, and this is also an extension point for Microsoft Teams. So you're seeing the importance of something that once was developed as a follow-up of basically like SharePoint web parts, and the add-on model is now becoming very mature, and is also coming at a point where you can build those apps and even as an ISV sell those using Microsoft App Source. And then attached to that, there is even something which is more cooler. And Christian already mentioned that when he was talking about this ability to respond to Yammer chat messages from your Outlook client, your web client, and in the future also your desktop client. And last week I saw a Teams chat coming in as in my inbox, and I could respond to that chat right from within the Outlook Web Access environment, Outlook for the web environment. And this is all being fueled by what is called the Fluid Framework. And that might just be one of the coolest things that were like, I think, was it last year, SharePoint conference, Christian, that it was announced and that we're now really seeing what's happening?
I thought it was Ignite. Or wasn't it Ignite last year?
Yeah,
Ignite 2019.
It's all a blur because as MVPs, we hear about stuff behind the scenes, but I believe it was Ignite.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was announced at SharePoint conference like a year ago. And Ignite, of course, it became bigger.
Yeah.
They might have changed the name a bit. So I think at Ignite, it was originally named as Fluid Framework. But anyway, this is huge, right? The ability to have to collaborate on a document or a bullet list or a piece of content across multiple workloads. And having that ability as a developer at your fingertips to build new apps, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, SPFX is getting extended now into Teams too, right? Where SPFX extensions, you can start, like there's some merging going on there between SPFX and Teams add-ins too, where the ability to put SPFX add-ins is something in Teams, I think. I've seen stuff about that.
Yeah, that's possible since the end of last year. So basically it allows you to, when you build a SharePoint framework application, you can basically change the manifest file, what it's called, a bit, and then you can use it as a Teams application. So the technology that you use for building SharePoint framework applications like React or the framework which is there, you only need a very small twitch to also build a Teams application. That's very nice.
Yeah, there's still more discussions going on. Andrew asked, would it be good to know best practices around throttling? I don't know of any best practices. Everything I've seen is that when you get throttled, you get slowed down, or it's for a short amount of time, and they essentially say keep trying until the throttle's lifted. Depending on how you hit throttles, if you misbehave too much, it'll show up in your message center. You start getting alerts, but I don't know if there's any exact numbers that are published around you will get throttled at X threshold.
I think it's dangerous if I would go into specifics, but if I'm not mistaken, from Build a couple of, like last month, Jeremy Take did a session which might hit this topic, and at Ignite there was also one or two very deep dive Microsoft Graph kind of sessions, which at least one of them hit this topic. So I would advise people to look that up and go to the website and search for it. And there might also be here on GlobalCon and the community, there might be some good topics on it. So we might help you find a good pointer.
Yeah, and Joe threw a document out there about kind of steps on how to avoid it. And again, I think based on what I know, it's a lot of general guidelines, no real hard numbers of try to avoid doing this.
Well, I know that's one thing that conversation goes back a couple of years to avoid from a migration standpoint. It's why Microsoft went and was working with a lot of the ISVs to basically to ensure that when there's a sanctioned third-party migration tool being used, that it doesn't get throttled, so it's not getting blocked as some strange behavior on a system, some non-typical traffic, but to recognize, hey, this is coming through these sanctioned tools, therefore they're doing a migration. That's let's not slow them down. We're not being hacked. This isn't a security issue. So if you've created an app as part of any development activity, you have to optimize your application that you've created and look at the way that you've architected a solution. If you find that you're being throttled through what you deem to be normal behavior, have a conversation with Microsoft to say, hey, this is what's going on. But again, I've not read that documentation to know what they suggest around that, but just using past experience working for ISVs, when you have a conversation with Microsoft, say, this is what we're doing, why we're doing it, this is what we're seeing, and you might get some recommendations on optimizing your solutions so that you're not getting throttled as well. So
yeah. So Andrew, a little bit more about that, because that's an interesting point. You said there's a number of issues with projects I've been on where an enterprise migrates to Office 365. The bandwidth usage spikes exponentially from historical on-prem, Teams, Skype, OneDrive, typically where internal network is a mess, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, that's interesting. It's something that a lot of people think about, because when you think traditional on-prem, all of your emails that are getting sent inter-office, inter-company, are never hitting your internet bandwidth. They're all hitting your local Exchange server, going over your 1 gig, your 10 gig internal network. Skype, same thing, SharePoint, OneDrive. You're staying all on that internal network. And then as soon as you go to Office 365, you're going to see that network spike on your internet connection, because now even when you send an email between two people in the office, it's having to go out to Office 365 and then back in over your network connection. Teams, OneDrive files, same thing. So something not a lot of people think about, especially during the migration when you're moving all that data initially, you're going to get some massive bandwidth spikes. And that's one of the reasons, too, and we talked about at the very beginning of the keynote, for avoiding VPN, get your split tunneling down, because of that change in the way the network traffic routes when you go from a traditional on-prem environment to an Office 365 environment.
It's interesting going back and looking at so prior to me joining the Microsoft community, so back in 2005, and I actually managed a relationship with a number of WAN optimization vendors, and some of those discussions too. It's different. The way that that we're collaborating and the technology utilizes our networks, and so you have to again look at where your people are, how they're using the technology. There are a lot more moving parts. It's this simpler way to add people in. Hey, go to this. Here's this URL. Go to this site. Log in. Let's collaborate on this. But obviously if you've got a team, if you're a multi country or multi-location or organization, you're collaborating across those. Maybe you have designers that are one location, a lot of massive CAD files that are being collaborated on remotely. Others are just doing just standard information worker activities. The way that they consume those network resources are going to be very different. And so you need to then optimize for what people are doing, where they're doing those things. So it certainly can be a more complex story. It's things that you need to look at. It's not necessarily. It's not just a URL
in particular. One very quick response to that is that, of course, with file migrations, you will see that, especially when you put on like OneDrive sync clients, people start syncing documents after migration, or people are going to start caching their local Outlook mailboxes. These are the spikes that happen. And the things that I've been seeing in the past months is that a lot of companies were adopting Microsoft Live events to do things like town hall meetings. And the thing there is that if you do a town hall meeting using Microsoft Teams live events, that if you not take the right precautions for your network infrastructure, of course you have one broadcaster broadcasting your live stream to the Microsoft Live backend Azure Media Services. But then if you have 1,000 viewers watching that stream in one location, you're getting this 1,000 feeds inside of your company downlink basically. So you have to be aware, and especially if things get back to normal and more people will be back at the office, this is something you need to take a look at, because if people are working from home, these downlinks are scattered all over the home connections of people. But when you have 1,000 people on one location, then you need to be aware of the fact, for example, that there are vendors which could make that work and make sure that they could, like, for 80% limit the incoming traffic of Microsoft Live events using the framework that Microsoft provides.
Yeah, and don't try to migrate everybody in one weekend. Don't try to migrate all of your SharePoint files and your Exchange mailboxes and Skype for Business in the same weekend. Spread it out, please.
Migrations are double-click activities, Ben. Then you're done. Just sit back and it just happens. What are you talking about?
like the one button on your stream pad. Like migrate, go.
You mean you just don't install the sync client and then just copy and paste all your files into your OneDrive client location and let them all sync up?
It's just that easy.
Yeah.
Come on.
Just that easy.
Yes. No, I was working with one client that they ran into that both. They have 200 locations, I think, 200-ish, up and down the East Coast of the United States. And every single office had a site-to-site VPN to their central office. And then it was a single egress point for all 200 locations for all internet traffic. And they started doing Exchange migrations and SharePoint migrations, and they they said, they're like, why is this going so slow? And I said, I told you, fix your network before you try this. Because 200 companies VPN'd and then a single egress point to the internet for Office 365 is not going to be a pleasant experience.
Correct. So, any last topics? I think there should be some point that we're
that we end.
Is there any other things left to discuss, or
no? We venture into the AMA. I think we go out with a whimper. Like, are we done? I think I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Do you have any cool music, Martin? Do you have like? Amanda said, "Why end now?" Ask us a question. No, why end now? Because I want to go on vacation.
Yeah. He wants to go on vacation. I need to go eat.
And frankly, I've been drinking this coffee for 2.5 hours now, and if I sit here much longer, I might explode.
That sounds like a good cue for you.
for me to exit.
We're gonna end so Ben doesn't explode. I think that's great.
Yes, there's the quote of the conference.
Good. Well, then I think the last thing I will do is I'm gonna wish you a very happy vacation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It'll be good. And I'll be in it. I'll still be in and out of the conference. I'm like you guys. I work for myself. Well, I think. Do you guys all work for yourself? Do you work for yourself, Martin? Are you independent too?
I work at a system integrator called.
Okay. Yeah, my vacations are just. I'm going to keep checking email. I'll probably be in and out of the conference. I think I'm doing an AMA later. But yes, have a great rest of the conference. Hope your session goes well later, Christian, Martin. And I hope, everyone enjoys the week. It should be fun.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right.
Enjoy your week. Enjoy
Thanks, guys.
GlobalCon2.